Welcome to my basement. Mwahaha. Hey everyone, welcome back to 2BeLikeChrist. Sorry we have to film in the basement today. The lighting upstairs is terrible. It's coming through the blinds and it's hitting my face and it's making me look like a zebra. So we're down in the dungeon. So in this video I want to talk about creating community through complaining and a better way to create community. Today it was unseasonably cold in the morning for October. And I was outside taking a walk at work, and I passed by another guy, and he mentioned how beautiful of a day it was. And that struck me as odd. I wondered why he didn't complain about how cold it was. And that got me thinking about why it is that it's so common for people to complain. What I realized was that people don't always complain just because they're Mr. Grumpy Gills all the time. Sometimes they complain to create community. The weather that I brought up a second ago is a really good example. People talk about the weather all the time, and a lot of times they complain about the weather. And this happens in interactions that we have with people who usually we don't know very well, but we're making small talk, trying to be friendly, and we say, oh, the rain is terrible today, or oh, the snow is terrible, or oh, it's too hot outside, ah. And is it really the case that the weather is just such a taxing aspect of our lives? Usually, no. But complaining about the weather is an easily relatable attempt for somebody to kind of create some community between someone they don't know very well. It's the easy go-to when there's nothing else obvious to talk about. And people do this with all kinds of things. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's events at the office. But then what I realized is that I do this. And when you look at the church, and more specifically smaller groups within the church, a lot of smaller groups within the church are actually based off of community centered on complaining. They're largely held together by the fact that every Sunday after the Sunday sermon and Bible class and worship service, they go out to eat, and the first thing that they talk about is, maybe it's a complaint about how the preacher didn't do a very good job, or how they didn't like the song leader, the Bible class was just rotten. Maybe you share a frustration with somebody else in the church about a certain aspect of your individual congregation. It's an easily relatable topic to bring up if you just want to shoot the breeze. You begin to build connections by sharing your mutual frustrations. Or here's another one that you hear a lot of times in churches. People complaining, Christians complaining to each other about the culture. Oh, the culture's so bad. The church can't grow. It's not growing. No one's interested in Jesus anymore because of the culture. And if you sit back and actually take a tally of how much time people spend bonding and creating a community around complaining, I think a lot of times you'd be surprised at just how much time is taken up by doing that. But now let's talk about a better way, a way to build communities that are built on something stronger than complaining. When we look into the Bible, we see really strong communities. For example, in the book of Nehemiah, you find Nehemiah coming back from Persia, rallying all of the people into one community of builders to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and they end up doing it in 52 days. What about the community that we see in Acts chapter 2, 3, 4, and in the early church? These people who were meeting every single day, they were selling their possessions to give to the people who had need. That was a tight-knit community. What made those communities strong? It's not that they sat around complaining to each other. It was actually the exact opposite. These communities had a godly ambition, and that godly ambition brought them together and even made them capable of making really hard, sacrificial decisions. The problem with the community that's built around complaining is that, look, it's not hard to complain. It doesn't take any sacrifice or effort on someone's part to be a complainer. Anyone can join, but when times get tough, that group is untested as to how tightly knit that community actually is. What we find when we look at the story of Nehemiah or the early church, Nehemiah asked his people to do some things that were very difficult, and it's somewhat surprising to see just how committed they were to the overall good of their community and how ready they were to do difficult things to support one another. The early church obviously was a well-formed, strong community. When the testing of the persecution came, they were ready to handle it because they had been tested by the sacrifices that they had already made for one another. And so take a look at your church and maybe the group of people that you hang around with within that church and ask yourself, which community have we created? I don't see Jesus sitting around and complaining about a lot of things in his ministry because he had a goal. He was going somewhere. He had a mission and a purpose to fulfill from the Father. And I think we need to ask ourselves the same question. Do I have one of those? Do I have a godly ambition? Am I attempting anything hard for the sake of Christ, maybe to correct the things that I used to complain about? And is it driving me and the people around me to do something constructive or am I just sitting around complaining about the things that I'm never going to take up and attempt? So get some ambition to achieve something for the Lord and in the Lord's church. And I think what you'll find is that the people around you will rally together, and you'll form a church that you perhaps never thought possible before, in community that's deeper than you ever thought possible before, because you're pursuing something just like Christ was pursuing his mission here on the earth. Thanks everybody for watching. If you haven't checked out the website, do that. It's in the link below, 2BeLikeChrist.com. Also subscribe to the channel and subscribe. Wait, I just said that. And like the video and comment down below and share it with your friends. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.